sheet. If you can sign your name and email, I'll put you on the email list. I promise you these are good political emails. One coming up on Tuesday, we'll try to get you inputted quickly enough, is my grandmother's arugula recipe and our family baking it. This is something you might want to watch, share with others. It's a great to keep up in the campaign. The moment we're in is one that all of us are asking, what do we need to do to help fight for our democracy during a time that it's not clear what the future of this country holds. I am an optimist about how we get through this. Let me start by telling you why. Then let me next tell you why I'm running for Attorney General. So thus, Phil Weiser for Attorney General. And finally, let me tell you about what the Attorney General's office is. How many people here feel like they know what the Attorney General does, honestly? Okay, we got a couple ringers in the room. Wow, this is an educated crowd. I want to make sure you get even more details about this because it's really important to me, and I'll explain why, that all of you understand the importance of this office. First, why I'm optimistic. My experience during this campaign, it's about a year, because I announced on May 11th, I remember that date because my birthday is May 10th. And we're almost on a year, so we'll spend it this week sort of capturing our campaign in a year. This has been an incredible year. I want to share some of that with you. And the overriding message I'm getting is about the people of Colorado, their commitment to moving forward, rejecting the political games we're seeing in Washington, and fighting for our democracy. I've been to every county in our state, and what I continue to see is what drew me to Colorado in the first place. People here care about each other. They care about solving problems together, and that's the type of Attorney General that I want to be for Colorado. The second reason I'm optimistic has to do with my family history. One of the great things about being on the campaign trail is you get to hear about people's family stories, and every family has a story. Let me tell you about my family story. It's at once a classic American story. I'm a first-generation American in my family. My mom came here when she was 6 with my grandparents. They didn't have any skills, didn't speak the language. And they both got jobs working in the garment district in New York, in plants that made coats. They called it the schmata industry back then. They worked really hard, and my mom went to college, was the first in her family to do that. The same for my dad. They both lived at home, and they worked their way through college. And they had me right when they graduated. And they wanted me to find my calling, which has always been about public service. What's unique about my family story is my mom was born on April 13th, 1945, in a concentration camp in Nazi Germany. The next day, April 14th, the US Army liberated my mom and my grandmother from Buchenwald. Just recently I was at an event and someone came up to me and said, my grandfather was there at Buchenwald liberating the people who'd been there. And that experience changed his life. And he talked about that experience. And he died just recently, right after Trump was inaugurated. The family thought maybe he couldn't take it. Yeah. This experience is special because my grandmother lived to a few years ago, and she would tell me about her story of survival and resilience. I would say, Bubby, which is what I called her, how did you believe you'd have a better future? And she would tell me it's easier to believe. She taught me never to give up hope, and that lesson speaks to this moment, and a moment that we all have choices about how we approach politics in 2018. And there are a lot of people who want to say, I just can't take it, or we're going to hell in a handbasket. I can't say that, and I know you can't either. That spirit of optimism, this calling for public service, it's what drove my whole career. Going to law school and then clerking for Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the Supreme Court. Working in the Justice Department under Presidents Clinton and Obama, and working for President Obama in the White House, and then being the dean here at CU Law. I've been at the CU Law School for the last 20 years. This is a career that I've had living the American dream. And I want to talk to you about what's at stake in this moment and why I'm running to be Attorney General. And I want to introduce to you the campaign slogan that will come out in my TV ad. Connie tells me she's a connoisseur of this genre, so I look forward to the feedback. The slogan will be stronger, fairer, wiser. Spelled W-E-I-S-E-R. It's important to poke fun at yourself when you can. And I do think there's meaning in each concept, and I want to walk you through it. First, I've been to a lot of churches and a lot of libraries on this campaign trail, and I've seen in more than one church the following quote from the book of Joshua. Be strong, be courageous, don't be afraid. We need strong leadership because there's a lot happening in our country right now we've got to be able to challenge. We've got to stand up for our Colorado values. When it comes to protecting the dreamers against illegal, unconstitutional behavior, we would have thought that Congress, who under our Constitution is charged with protecting our Constitution, would have stood up. But that didn't happen. Who's standing up for the dreamers? State attorneys general. But not from our state, from other states. We got to change that. Gerrymandering is a scourge to our democracy. When Ken Salazar was our attorney general here in Colorado, he stopped a gerrymander by challenging it under Colorado constitutional law. I will protect competitive districts here in Colorado, even if it comes to challenging them the way Ken Salazar did. Ken has been a great mentor to me, a great leader, the one Democrat who's been attorney general the last 40 years, and he's endorsed me and guiding me on this journey. And third, when you think about what's happening with our land, air, and water, and you see Scott Pruitt, who has been a threat to our land, air, and water, what has our Attorney General done? She sided with Scott Pruitt. Our governor has said, wait a minute, we developed this methane rule here in Colorado to protect our air. The EPA adopted our rule, and now our Attorney General is challenging it? It's crazy. It's not protecting Colorado. That's what we need from our Attorney General. But we don't have someone who's strong enough to stand up against an administration that has not served our values in this case. I want to be that Attorney General. Number two, fairer. What I'm hearing a lot around this state are people who feel they're not getting a fair shot. There are challenges I want to talk with you about because the Attorney General matters on all fronts. First, the opioid epidemic. When I went to Alamosa County and visited with the sheriff there, what he told me, and he since talked about this in a Colorado Public Radio story, 90% of the inmates in that jail are opioid users. And he says, I can't help them. He can't provide drug treatment. And there's no drug treatment facility within 2 hours of Alamosa. We have to do better than this. And there's a path to doing that. The pharmaceutical companies who pushed out these products, people got dependent on them. They made a bunch of money. They have to be held accountable. And they will be. Now, our Attorney General is not suing them, but other state AGs are. And as state AG, I will join that. We will win a bunch of money, and then we'll have the opportunity to use that money to support drug treatment opportunities in places that desperately need it. Because putting opioid users in jail is inhumane and makes no sense. Number two, broadband internet access. We have a challenge in Colorado. There are communities here that are not living in the 21st century. They lack broadband, which is the electricity of the 21st century. In Craig, Colorado, for example, what I heard from the head of the hospital there is they can't use electronic healthcare records. They can't use telemedicine because he doesn't have reliable broadband access. We've got to do better than that. Our current Attorney General has been on the sidelines, both as the legislature considered broadband issues and when the county commissions are working on these issues, not engaging. That's wrong. We need to make sure we give everyone a chance to succeed in the 21st century, and that means access to broadband. And we also have to protect network neutrality, which means we all get equal access, and we don't have some traffic discriminated against or blocked. I'll fight for net neutrality as next Attorney General here in Colorado. And finally, and this is an important point, there are a lot of companies who might try to take advantage of people. Pull the fast one, like Wells Fargo, which opened up fake bank accounts for people, charged them for them, fired the employees who blew the whistle, and put a black mark on their record so they couldn't be rehired. We need Attorney General to stand up for us and protect us and ensure that people are treated fairly. That's what I'll do as Attorney General. And finally, what do I mean by Weiser leadership or the Weiser way? What I mean is that we have an innovative, collaborative problem solver as our Attorney General, not someone who play political games. What have we seen from our office currently? Political games. Here in Boulder County, we have a self-evident example. When the county commission here was working on oil and gas development to ensure that any such development is safe and doesn't hurt the public health, what did our Attorney General's office do? She sued Boulder County without ever talking to them first. I've talked to Elise Jones about this, and I say, when do you hear from the Attorney General? You know what she says? When she sues me. That's wrong. Because that's not trying to solve a problem. If you want to solve problems, you do it by talking to people, by working through issues and finding solutions. But to file a lawsuit without ever talking to someone, that's playing political games, and it's wrong. We deserve better. But the only way we're going to get better is if we can get the word out about why this office matters. So here's what I'm up against. In the last 40 years, since 1978, when J.D. McFarland won a second term, there have been 9 elections. 7 of those 9, the Democrats have won the governorship. Only 2 of those 9 have we won the Attorney General's job. Both times was Ken Salazar. What's going on there, people might ask? Number one answer, most people don't know what the Attorney General's job is. They don't know who the person running is, and they don't bother to vote down the ballot. They can vote for governor, they can vote for Congress, but stop. Particularly Democrats, who often are quite disciplined about this. Well, if I don't know anything, I guess I shouldn't vote at all. 2018 in particular, that's the wrong default rule. We need Democrat down the ballot. And we need to explain to people, this is your lawyer, the lawyer for the people, to stand up for you, whether it's your clean water, your civil rights, being treated fairly as a consumer. That's an important job. And if you elect a governor who's a Democrat, but then a Republican AG, you get the AG undermine the governor on a range of issues, environmental issues, health care. Why would you do that? We can't allow that to happen. Second reason why this happens, there's a group called the Republican Attorneys General Association. This is a dark money group. Has anyone here read the book Dark Money by Jane Mayer? Great book. Don't read it before you go to bed. It'll give you nightmares. This book talks about the influence of dark money hijacking elections. This is money that comes in from out of state, from some shell company that might be called like Citizens for Responsible Colorado. The companies who give to this corporation all keep their names out of it, so we don't know who they are. And then this shell corporation, like the Republican Attorney General Association, could spend, in my race, $5 million. And they're going to try to defame me and say, oh, you can't trust Phil. He's a out-of-touch law professor who wants to let the criminals free and the immigrants in and take your guns, or whatever nonsense they're going to try to distract people. And they're going to not tell people what the Attorney General's office is about, solving problems on behalf of the people of Colorado on a range of issues, from water and broadband to the opioid epidemic to working to protect our civil rights. I need you to understand that, and I need you to share with other people what this is about. Because if we can have a people-powered campaign where people contribute however they can, whether it's being on Facebook, liking Phil for Colorado and sharing that, getting our emails and sharing them, talking to people, holding house parties or co-hosting house parties, your voice can matter. And if we get people's voices across this state engaged in what matters in 2018, we'll fight for our democracy. And we'll fight for the Colorado that we all want, and we'll stand up against political games that threaten the future of our state and our nation. I'd be honored to have your support, would welcome your questions, and again, feel free to sign up on our sheet, talk to Pal and I afterwards. I look forward to any of your thoughts or questions. It's worth giving the details on the election. First, important detail, on June 26th, there's a primary. There will be 2 people on the ballot, myself and Joe Salazar. Joe is a state representative, not related to Ken. Ken has endorsed me. Joe has not run a operation before. I have, both for President Obama in the Justice Department, working in the White House, and at CU Law School. This is a leadership management job. I got in after Joe had gotten in because I believe I had something different to offer. People should get educated and make a choice in the primary. I believe I will be the candidate in the general election. That will be November 6th against George Brockler, the district attorney from Arapahoe County. Thank you.
Going beyond that, there's this group that I get all the time, Bold Progressives.
Boulder Progressive Democrats, yep.
No, not Boulder, it's Bold Progressive Democrats.
Bold Progressive Democrats, okay.
Yeah. And I didn't see your name on that list. Has anybody nominated you?
You're the first person to mention it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Don't you all get those emails?
I will tell you this, it is hard to keep up. Yeah, Dave may need the same memo. Yeah,
Well,
Beatrice.
the question is, I'm looking at like what the national, like from Supreme Court right now, the fight about the gay bakers.
Yes.
What can an attorney general do in case they come up with a decision that may be detrimental to people? Because I just look at it, it's like, I don't care who bakes a cake for me. But what I look at is the discriminatory practice. So say for instance, if they decide that, okay, that they can discriminate, what can we do then as citizens? Where do our rights, do we have any rights anymore after that?
Beatrice's point, Beatrice, right, is that right?
Yeah.
Is powerful. Let me back up, give a little more context, just because I know not everyone is as in the weeds. There's a case before the Supreme Court this year that is a big deal case. It comes from Colorado. It comes from the Colorado Civil Rights Commission that determined that a gay couple can't be denied service from a baker, and that became a federal case, is at the US Supreme Court. The argument that the baker says is, I have a First Amendment right to use my artistic talents as I choose. The danger, as Beatrice picked up perfectly, if that argument is condoned, it becomes a powerful shield that someone says, oh, when I serve my restaurant meals, they're so elaborately done, I wouldn't want to serve Mormons because I find the Mormon religion offensive. Or when I am putting people up in my inn where I have all these artistic touches, I don't think I want to allow blacks or Jews. If you allow this First Amendment shield, how do you draw the line to stop it from being used in a way that erodes the basic civil rights protections we've had since 1964, when the Civil Rights Act was challenged and was upheld in an important case called Heart of Atlanta Motel, which said if you have an inn, you don't get to discriminate. You have to let everyone in. There's never been this First Amendment artistic exception before, and I don't know how you would implement such an exception without gutting civil rights protections. If the Supreme Court rules the wrong way in this case, which I, too, am scared could happen, it will be my job as Attorney General to find every way we can, it's a fancy legal word, to cabin that ruling, to come up with a way to limit it, and to defend civil rights protections that we have under Colorado law, because this is a Colorado law that's being challenged. It's not a federal law, but it's being challenged with this, I think, novel First Amendment argument. And this is an important point, and it's a very powerful one. You want the best legal talents leading this office in the most creative, effective ways to protect our values. I believe I can lead this office very effectively on a range of issues. That's why I'm choosing to run. Because in the right hands, this is an office that's an engine for progress. In the wrong hands, it's playing political games.
All right, you brought up the whole oil and everything, and the hot topic out here is the fracking
Right.
and the 2,500-foot setback and all
Right.
that kind of stuff. And I've been emailing questions to
Yes.
the campaign manager when I was delegate, but what's your stance right now on the 2,500 and the fracking stuff?
I am looking at this issue carefully. Let me tell you what my holdup / concern is, and use Boulder County as an example. The proposal, just because again, I don't know that everyone has followed this as deeply, is to have a state law requirement that any new oil and gas drilling has to be 2,500 feet from any residential development. One challenge of this, let's say here in Boulder where there's some existing wells, the company with those existing wells says, I want to replace my existing wells with fewer new wells that are safer and make less noise. Under this proposal, that wouldn't be allowed.
So you can't upgrade what exists.
Correct.
After the fact that
Correct.
people already built housing where they shouldn't have built housing in the first place.
That's correct.
Oh,
This
interesting.
is an important point, and I so appreciate
Yeah.
you, in the spirit you are, having a dialogue. One of the saddest parts of being on the campaign trail is, and this is going to get a lot worse in the general, sometimes people caricature arguments, they don't listen, they demonize, and that's not the type of politics that I'm about. I'm about dialogue and problem solving. What is important on this issue is the result, protecting the public health and safety. That's true north. What a 2,500 categorical rule does is creates a lot of constraints that could be, in some cases, overbroad, and in other cases wouldn't do enough. And there are a lot of other issues that are important that have to get looked at too. It's not only about the setback. And so I have some concerns about this. I haven't reached my final judgment, but I'll be candid. The reason I've been reluctant is I've heard these concerns, I'm working them through. And I recognize for a lot of people, this is a meaningful proposal, and I understand where that instinct is coming from. What I can tell you about how I'll be as Attorney General is always think hard about any proposal. I'm always going to look to do what's best for the public, and I will be very transparent about what I do and why I do, and I always will want to listen and hear from people. Yes?
Money in politics. So in general, what's your stance on that? And specifically, where is your campaign money coming from? And specifically, who is it from?
Let me give you my broad theory of the case, and then let me give you the specific answer. The biggest threat, by far, I believe, is dark money. I just gave you the reality I'm facing. I've raised, we'll announce this week with the exact number, I'm gonna call it 1.2.5 million dollars. That is all from individuals. They are all disclosed, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. What's gonna happen in the general election? $5 million, which is 4 times that amount, in undisclosed money coming from out-of-state companies. Here's the bad news. We don't know who's behind that money, but George Brockler, you can bet they're gonna tell him, hey, by the way, that $5 million supported you, I was part of that. That is a core threat to our democracy. I think there are 3 core threats to our democracy, and if we're not careful, we're gonna lose our democracy. The first is money in politics, specifically dark money. Number 2, gerrymandering, I've talked about that. It's a real threat to our democracy. And finally, voter suppression, and people being told they can't vote or intimidated about voting. I am committed to democracy as a core value, and I'm scared. On money in politics, let's say we deal with dark money, and I'll tell you my plan for that is on my website. The short version is we got to overturn Citizens United, and we also have to pass a law like the one Montana passed called the Disclose Act, which requires that anyone who wants to influence elections here in Colorado has to disclose all their donors. In Montana, that law got passed, and dark money left Montana politics. That's what we have to do here in Colorado. Once we get rid of dark money, what do we do about money in elections? And this is an important question and conversation. I'm open to a lot of ideas on how to improve this situation. We are going to have people raising money and spending money in elections. We always have. The most important thing is it's disclosed, which dark money is not. As for my donors, this has been an unbelievably elevating, inspiring part of the journey. Because I started, I had never run for office. I had no idea what was going to happen. I have 5,000 people who follow, who I'm connect to on LinkedIn. I'm approaching 4,000 unique donors. I've not actually analyzed how much of those two are the same, but there's a lot of overlap. A lot of the people supporting me are friends and colleagues I've had before. When I was dean at CU Law School, I had lots of former students, lots of alums. They have been extraordinary. I served in the administration with President Clinton, President Obama. People from those administrations have come out and said, hey, we admire your commitment to public service, we'll support you. I'm not taking any PAC money, I've got no money from corporations. I've done hard work getting money from ordinary people. And that's what I'm gonna keep doing. It is scary that I'm up against this dark money machine, but I believe that if we get people engaged and the voice of people, we can still save our democracy. Because people are suspicious of campaign ads. Connie being exceptional in that she's a connoisseur, she evaluates them, and you should. You should look at them hard and see what can you glean from them. We'll have a campaign ad that'll be in the air. But more excited than I am about campaign ads, people. People who get to know me, hear from me, get to talk about me. Does that answer the question?
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
You talked about gerrymandering a little bit. I was at a town hall with Senator Fenberg and Representative Becker a while back, and they just pointed out that in their view, Colorado's gerrymandering committee, or whatever it's called, works quite, what?
Redistricting.
Okay, yeah, sorry, not, of course not. The redistricting committee, right.
That would be ironic, the gerrymandering committee. It's not the idea.
The redistricting committee, it works really well in Colorado, and it's very well, a good bipartisan effort. And I've heard that there could be some gerrymandering initiatives on the ballot in November. And some of them may be sponsored by Koch brothers or other people, and that we're to be very wary of some of them, because according to the town hall that I attended, things are working pretty well in Colorado, and for us to be very hesitant, very suspicious of gerrymandering things that are on the ballot. So I just wanted to mention that and see if you wanted to comment on that at all, just because the people in the room here want them to know that that's what I had heard.
I have not seen the latest on what might be on the ballot. And there was advice I got when I was clerking. So I clerked for Justice Ginsburg and Justice White on the Supreme Court. And Justice White, in an argument where someone said, Your Honor, I'm sorry, I'm really nervous. He said, counsel, stay nervous. Stay nervous. In general, the presumption, vote Democrat, vote no on any proposal you don't know what it is. Could sound great. If you don't know what it is, vote no. We got some bad stuff in our state constitution, Tabor being the most notable one, because people are like, oh, that sounds kind of nice, and they didn't know all the details. And this is a threat on the gerrymander. I don't know the specifics to whether or not this is going to be a problem. It could be a good idea. I had heard, I thought Fenberg was working on some proposal on, right? So this is what gets tricky.
Okay.
Fenberg has warned you to be nervous, and at the same time, he's working on a proposal that he would embrace.
Okay, good.
So stay tuned, I guess is my answer.
Okay.
And stay nervous. Time for maybe one last question?
Yeah, 4 minutes.
4 minutes left, so maybe 2 questions, depending how fast it is. Yeah,
Well,
Beatrice.
one more on felons.
Mm.
Are you able to try to get some felons their right to vote again? Especially for people that have, stupid things like minor drug possession.
This is really important for all of you to know. Under Colorado law, the only person who cannot vote is a person currently in prison for committing a crime. If you are in jail awaiting trial, you can vote. If you are out and a felon, you can vote. You are allowed to vote. Now, we need to still ask about criminal justice reform, including if you're in prison right now for a marijuana offense that's no longer illegal, should you be in prison still? If you're in prison because you're an opioid user, should you be in prison? If you're a first-time juvenile offender who could potentially be on a better track by doing a diversion program, should you get that opportunity? Hell yeah. We're spending so much money on prisons. We have to ask ourselves, is it truly necessary to keep us safe? Or is it that we've got this default that we just put people in prison and jail without asking enough, what are the alternatives? And I want to look hard at the alternatives, look hard at reforming our criminal justice system to help us do better. And there's a huge appetite to do that. Democrats, Republicans, sheriffs, district attorneys, our current attorney general, she's been MIA on this issue, like so many issues. And we've got to do better here in Colorado. Well, let me end by thanking you for all your leadership and engagement. The spirit coming together. We need your energy on campaigns. If you are interested in learning more about my campaign, if you haven't signed up to step aside, you can get on our email list, you can go to our website, it's Phil for Colorado. I mentioned Phil for Colorado on Facebook. This is a really important year. Thank you for being part of the effort to help save our democracy. Thank you.